Welcome to my comparison of the best chess software for the purpose of deep analysis. If you're a developer of any of the software reviewed here today and you feel like you've been hard done by or I've misrepresented your product, please send an email to carl.bicknell@gmail.com and I'll certainly try to give you a fair chance. The purpose of this review is not to slate any software for the sake of it, but to show what the possibilities are of what is currently out there. This review has a specific focus. It is not a general comparison of chess software. I'm taking one thing which chess software does, which is analysis, and seeing how well each user interface does it. I'm not looking at the engines themselves, but only the user interface. I don't want to rush this review, so if you just want the conclusion, feel free to skip to the last 2 minutes or so where I wrap everything up. I've got a bit of a story to tell before we get there, and I want to take time because often analysis is about a struggle and the story illustrates the struggle. It's a story to get to the truth of one particular position, and it took several years. In fact, it took about 10 years to finally get there. So if you just like the short version, then go to one of the appropriate moments in the video. Now, why concentrate on the subject of analysis? Analysis is at the very heart of chess. It appeals just as equally to the classical over-the-board player, the correspondence player, the opening repertoire builder, the engine versus engine computer enthusiast. It's what chess players do. They analyze. So what is this deep analysis? Well, it's the art of achieving two goals. First, identifying the best move in the position and the likely follow-up. Secondly, determining the correct evaluation of the position, a win for white, a draw, or a win for black. In complex positions such as opening systems, difficult endgames, or muddy middle games, this task is not easy. For the last 20 years or so, even professional chess players have turned to computers to help them, and at least for 30 years, club players have done the same thing. In the mid-1980s, there were expensive, dedicated chess computers which cost thousands of pounds, but there was no serious chess software. My chess software was this, the ChessMaster 2000. It was about 1,500 ELO on my Atari ST, running at a whopping 8 megahertz, and it had no dedicated analysis functionality. In '89, I got the Chess Player 2150, and it had a lot of fun with it. The graphics were pretty trippy, and the engine wasn't bad, but it was tedious to analyze with. But I clearly remember in 1991, there was a huge breakthrough when M-Chess came out. M-Chess combined a super strong program with a professionally laid out user interface. You just enter in a few moves. And you see at the bottom right, it gives you a node counter. That was relatively new, an evaluation and a main line. It can all be switched on at the click of a button, laid out exactly as you would find it. Not only does it find 95 instantly, but it presents the information in a really clear and easy to read manner. What I'm looking for in the year 2021 is something which goes beyond 30-year-old M-Chess. I want to see deep analysis taken seriously. I want to see far more than just a line of text spat out as the main variation. I want to see automated analysis. I want to see the user interface take a position and all by itself dig right down to the roots of what's going on until we know for sure what the best move is and how to rightly assess what's in front of us. I want to be able to network computers together, perhaps computers all over the world, to produce my own chess cluster with fantastic computational power. I want to be able to analyze not just a single position, but an entire opening system. I want to be able to analyze it so deeply, I get down to a known ending, which the table bases tell me is either won or drawn. I want the interface software to turn the engines I own into a chess juggernaut. It is 2021. Let's move on past the 1990s. The contenders for this comparison are, number one, ChessBase 16, newly released, top of the range, frighteningly expensive if I'm honest, but beautifully produced by the German software company ChessBase. Number 2, Shredder. Well known from the ancient engine with the same name. Number 3, Hayek's Chess Explorer, also an extremely old engine from the 1980s and also from my own England. And we'll be looking at that one in due course. Number 4, Nibbler, a new graphical approach written specifically for LC0. Number 5, Aquarium 2021, just out. I was a beta tester for this software. I'll put my hand up and admit that, but I'll try not to let it spoil any of my objectivity. And number 6, Chess Position Trainer, which I'll explain later on. There were various other candidates. Online people proposed various websites and other bits of chess software, but as I looked at them in turn, nothing was as advanced as what's on the list. If you think I've missed something out, send me an email to the address given previously. For this review, I have 2 positions for each software package to consider. The first is from the opening and has an interesting backstory behind it, which shows the value of chess software, as I mentioned earlier. The second position is a tricky middle game. With each piece of chess software, I'll start by reviewing the general look and feel of the interface and pointing out any bugs I find. These things are important as chess is supposed to be enjoyable. If the interface looks like a dog's dinner or has bugs, my analysis experience may be compromised. The first position arises after these moves. e4, c5, well-known line of the Sicilian. But then it gets a bit unusual and we get this wild sequence. And then we get to here. Now, this game is mentioned in the book Secrets of Chess Tactics by Dvorzyetsky. I hope I've pronounced that right. And this particular game is actually one of his games against Tretyakov in Moscow, 1968. Anyway, after a chaotic opening, black has emerged a pawn up, as you can see, but has a weakened king position. Black could really do with a bishop on this square here, and he doesn't have one. Furthermore, the H file, although not immediately relevant now, you can imagine how that would be very useful in the future. Now, in the book, they give this very beautiful sequence. Knight takes h7. And the point of the move is that after king recaptures, you get queen to h3 check, king to g8, rook to h1, exclamation mark, d6 attacking the queen, queen comes into h6, and now black is in big trouble because white is threatening to just drop the king back to g1. But the point of the move d6 on black's side was to play the move bishop to g4, and what he's going to try and do is seal up the h file. But white has this stunning finish. King to g3, attacking the bishop goes to h5, blocking the h file, but now white sacrifices, and with rook h5, pawn takes, check, 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 and it's all over, because as I'm sure you can see, it's going to be terminal very, very soon. It is a beautiful sequence. As soon as I saw that, I thought, wow. I got interested in testing chess engines and tactical positions back in the 90s, and not surprisingly, none of them could solve this position at all. The years went past. Deep Blue came and went in 97. In 2001, I challenged international master Chris Beaumont to play a 10-game match at tournament time controls against Fritz 6. Fritz 6 won the match decisively, running on a fast for then anyway, Pentium 3 933 Coppermine processor, and even though it was at tournament time controls, it won the match 9-1. And yet it stood no chance at all on this position, no matter how long I gave it to think. In 2005, Crilly Donninger and his team produced a new monster to fill the absence left by Deep Blue. They called it Hydra. It looked at 200 million nodes per second, the same as Deep Blue, but searched 6 plies deeper. This was not only the strongest chess computer in the world, but in my opinion, the strongest chess entity. And it was also the year, 2005, that Machine finally surpassed man. Since IBM never gave Kasparov a rematch, we don't know what would have happened in the late 90s. But in 2005, it was decisive. Hydra crushed Mickey Adams. I saw it live in London. The result of the match was 5.5-half, and Crilly told me afterwards privately that he estimated Hydra to be around 3,100 ELO, a claim which I accept. A few months earlier, I'd emailed him this position and asked him to try his monster machine on it. I wasn't expecting a reply, but then he emailed me back a log of the analysis. Hydra did not find the move knight h7. Instead, it preferred this move, queen to f4. And the point is, the queen on f4 attacks the rook on b8. And his conclusion was simply that white is also threatening to play knight h7 next go. And therefore, the move queen to f4 may well be just a simpler win, because the rook on b8 presumably has got to move, and as soon as it moves, white plays knight h7, king takes h7, and then the queen can come in to h6 with check because it's supported by the bishop on c1. I was simultaneously impressed with the supercomputer's findings, far superior to any chess software of the day, and yet I was also a bit gutted because the book doesn't even mention queen to f4. Well, the years passed. Then we had the Rybka revolution, the brainchild of Vasek Rychek. Rybka was far, far stronger than anything else out there, and a bit more fruity. It had a lot to contribute. And about this time, a new piece of software came out called Aquarium. I revisited this position, and with the help of Rybka 3, I think it was, running as the project engine for several days, we unearthed new analysis together. Hydra had missed something. After the move queen to f4, black has the stunning defense e5. Now this gives back a pawn, but it really interrupts the white attack. So for example, after queen takes e5, d6 attacking the queen, queen drops back to g3. Notice that the h3 square is now covered by the bishop, and black can do something like knight to e6, defending. Furthermore, the book had also missed the best defense after white plays knight takes h7, because here black has got the stunning defensive try knight to d3. At first sight, you think, what on earth has knight d3 got to do with knight h7? It doesn't seem to be related at all. But the idea behind the move is that black can defend on the 5th rank with the rook if the knight is captured. The best line appears to be to ignore the knight d3, get on with rook h1, knight takes c1, king to g1. You can see it's getting quite nasty. d5, that stops the queen coming to h3, and then rook c1, rook f to e8, getting out the way of the knight. Queen to f4, threatening to come in on h6, bishop to f5, and now, lovely. So white has got some very difficult moves to find, certainly, but black can put up a sterner defense with the move knight d3, and I've not given black's best line there, I just wanted to end the game. So, how did we find all of this? Well, modern engines, some modern engines can find this all by themselves nowadays, but let's see what our software can find by itself. The second position is fiendish even for the best chess engines today in 2021. This middle game position has a number of very complex positional elements. Black's king is clearly in danger, and yet there's no obvious way to get at it. The bishop on f6 is clearly unsavable, and yet it cannot be reasonably captured because that would just allow the white queen into the king side after white recaptures with the g-pawn. What makes the solution so remarkable is the depth of the conception. After white's best move, which appears to be knight to h4, black can capture the knight, But then after queen to h3, knight to f5, queen to h5, what, of course, white would love to do is to ski lift a rook to the h-file and deliver mate on the h-file. But the black knight on the f5 square covers the two ski lift junction points. And therefore, it's really not obvious how white can win this. How is white supposed to win? Well, actually, there is a win here, but it's not easy to find. How will our software cope with this difficult challenge? Okay, this is ChessBase 16. It's an extremely well-known user interface. It's recently released at the end of 2020. For some people, this is the gold standard of how chess user interfaces should be. For obvious reasons, it's quite similar to Fritz 17 in some areas, but I actually prefer the look and feel of ChessBase to Fritz. There's a couple of things you should know about before we begin. First of all, it's not free. If you go on their website, you can see the starting price. The program only is 120 euros, and that's excluding databases, and it can very quickly ramp up. In ChessBase's defense, if you are a regular customer and keep upgrading year by year, they do give fairly hefty discounts, but even so, it is relatively expensive compared with the other software. Moving into the board window and looking at the analysis functions, ChessBase's main strength, as you may have gathered by the name, is its database handling, but we're not interested in that. We're looking at its analysis capabilities, which is also very, very important. There are a variety of different things that ChessBase has up its sleeve. Recently added is this idea of having something called novelty mining, where you can click on this button and you build up your own novelties. You select how long you want the engine to think for, whether you want it to look at other games or exclude other moves rather that have been played, or whether you want it to find a genuine novelty. You can just select every move and it will consider almost everything. It doesn't work very well in this position, I have to say, because we're kind of on the extremities of theory and this game is not well known. Another function that ChessBase has up its sleeve is if we go to surveys, you can click the build survey button. And this is something which has received rave reviews by people. It's kind of similar to their earlier product, which is Openings Encyclopedia, except that Openings Encyclopedia is something that grandmasters have produced, whereas build survey is a data-driven equivalent. So it's the computer actually building up the survey, and it does look pretty cool in mainline theory, but it won't work here because there just aren't enough games to drive a survey from this position. And certainly with the second position we're going to analyze, it'll be completely useless because it's a unique position. So those two don't work so well. However, what it does have is this tab here, Analysis, and you've really got two main options. Obviously, we're not interested in the standard infinite analysis, yawn, which even MChess could do. Tactical analysis is a game analysis looking for blunders. What we're interested in really is this one here, deep analysis and cloud analysis. The two are very similarly related. Cloud analysis is basically the same as deep analysis, except it allows you to access machines on the internet that connect through the ChessBase server. And actually one thing which is pretty cool, whilst we're on this topic, is open cloud engines. ChessBase does allow you the functionality of hiring a big computer, which would be on the ChessBase server, and using that for your analysis. Now this is great if you're using a slow laptop, providing you've got Wi-Fi internet connection, you could hook up to one of those big computers and analyze it through your laptop. So that is pretty cool, but it is basically just infinite analysis again. Deep analysis is different though. It's an automated system. So let's see how this works. Okay, so I'm just going to load up my engine. I'm going to choose the Fritz 17 engine because it's the latest one that ChessBase do. Set it to 16 threads. I'm running a 32 thread machine, so that should be okay. And then you go to analysis, deep analysis, and you just let it go. First comment to make is this is genuine automated analysis. I'm not doing anything here. The software is driving the whole thing. So that's pretty good. What you probably should know though is that you have very limited control. Your control over the project starts and ends with the engine that you select. As you can see at the top, it chooses the iteration time, and that iteration time will grow over time, but that is all driven by the software. I'm not controlling that. I'm not moving the pieces on the board. The software is doing everything that you can see on screen. I'm intending to leave this now for about 3 hours, so let's come back in 3 hours' time and see what it's come up with. Okay, again, let me make some comments here. It's 3 hours later now. As you can see, it has built up some variations on screen, and some of them are pretty good, but there are some issues here as well. One of the biggest weaknesses with deep analysis is that the analysis which it considers to be good as the analysis goes on gets rid of the analysis it considers to be bad. It actually deletes bad moves from its analysis as it continues to improve and search deeper. And the problem with that is that it disguises what's actually going on in the position. I want to see the bad analysis, just push it down lower. That would be a far more effective solution because, for example, after 3 hours, it still hasn't given the main line, which is knight h7, king h7. It does look, according to those variations, that if I gave it a few more hours, it probably would find it. But after 3 hours, I would expect to see the main line there. I totally accept that king h7 is not black's best move, so it's correct. But nevertheless, that ought to be there after 3 hours. And I suspect what happened was it probably was there after 5 minutes or something, and then it realized actually king h7, this isn't any good. And it got rid of it, and now it's kind of searched deeper and deeper and deeper. It's put it back again, and eventually we probably will get there. But that is a bit frustrating because that is all I'm left with on the screen. Now I can save this as a game, and therefore it doesn't have to be lost when I switch off my computer, but I can't tinker with it. I can't sort of go and add in lines that I want as the analysis is going on the fly. It's a bit limited from that point of view. But it is genuine automated analysis to an extent. So you have to give them credit. They have got something here. It's more than just infinite analysis, and I do use this from time to time. Okay, this is the second position. I'm going to really go for it now. So let's first of all add our Kapitza. This is the latest Stockfish development engine that I've got hold of. Let's really push it up. I've got 64 gigs of RAM, so that should be fine. Yeah, 30 threads, that would be good. Let's get that running. And now we'll go to our deep analysis, and off we go. So I'm going to give this, let's say, 3 hours. Let's see what it comes back with. Okay, the software's had about 3.5 hours now because I came back a little bit late. The best move, knight to h4, has not been detected, but it is a difficult move to find. It has found an interesting second alternative, which is the idea of playing h4 followed by moving the knight, followed by taking the pawn on h5 with the bishop. And there are some interesting variations in between. Let's see how cloud analysis gets on now before we make some concluding comments about ChessBase 16. Okay, so with cloud analysis, what you need to do is to have whatever resources you've got. In this case, I've got the same engine I used before, Stockfish from early January, running on 30 threads. I then go to Analysis, Open Cloud Engines. I'm going to grab the best things I can find. So let's have a look. Trying to get good value for money as well as what's available. Okay, so I'm now going to start my cloud analysis. I've gone onto the ChessBase server and have grabbed the 3 most powerful machines available with some incredible computational power here. So my one at the top is running on 30 threads, 16 cores, but I'm running on 30 threads, so I get a couple of free threads for Windows. This one here, 124 threads, this one here, 80, and this one here, 120. So let's add that up. That's 230, 330, 354. My goodness, that is just insane. That is an incredible amount of computational power. So cloud analysis, okay. Local engine, crawler, I think I want them that way around. I'll try and explain this in a minute. This is one of the problems actually with cloud analysis. It's not 100% clear what each one does. But let's have it that way around, and then, yeah, I'll keep all the settings the same. Off we go, 1, 2, 3, crunch. For reasons of cost, I'm not going to leave this running indefinitely. These engines are not free. You've got to pay for them, and because they are particularly powerful machines, this is going to rack up the cost pretty quickly. But let's see how it goes, and I'll come back in due course. Okay, we're getting towards the 20-minute mark now, so I'm going to start to bring this analysis session to a close. I'd just like to comment on what we're seeing on the screen. We are dealing with an exceptionally powerful setup here. 354 threads is not a small number by any means. It's the most amount I've ever used, I think. And despite that, the quality of the analysis is very similar to what we saw last time with the local engine. It hasn't found the winning move, knight to h4, and after watching it closely for the last 20 minutes, I think my observation is that if the engine which controls the root candidates does not propose the right move in its top 3 candidates, then the other 3 engines, monstrously powerful though they are, with their incredible sort of firepower between them, don't really help, because they're taking what the engine controlling the root candidates proposes and working with that. And therefore there is a bit of a weakness here in terms of method. It seems to me that on positions like this, where knight h4 just looks like a daft move, you're effectively relying upon a form of infinite analysis that is quite limited, because if you can't see why knight h4 is so great, then you're not going to explore it to great depths. And I would have hoped that this kind of automated analysis would at least try something which is a bit crazy, just to see where it goes. And by using more engines, maybe one engine could be put aside for looking at the more daft alternatives. But there we go. So I've got a few more comments to make, and we'll do that by looking at the help files and to see what they say about cloud analysis. But that's it for now. I'm going to save myself some money and terminate this session. Okay, considering ChessBase 16, looking at the help file here, this could be rewritten quite a bit better, I think. As I started to read this, it made it sound as though, well, I've highlighted that little bit at the top. One controls the analysis, one evaluates the candidates, and optionally 1 or 2 reply to the strongest candidate moves. And then from the diagram below, it made it seem as though the analysis crawler was the one controlling the analysis, and then I read a bit lower on still, and then I suddenly realized no, that wasn't the case, because it identifies the analysis crawler as the one that makes the candidate moves and generates a variation tree. So It's a bit confused. It could do with being rewritten and just making everything a bit clearer, I think. More clarity could be added on what each task exactly is. What task, for example, should get the best machine? Do you want your fastest computer to look at the root candidates or to be the analysis crawler? It would be very helpful if some kind of commentation was given on that. Also, is it better to have multiple copies of the same engine on different computers, or do you want different engines on different computers? Which one works best? That's some of the questions that they could do with addressing. But anyway, here is my take on their solution overall. You have to give ChessBase credit for coming up with something unique here. None of their competitors have this kind of platform where you can grab readily available computers from anywhere in the world and make them your own with a few button clicks. That really is amazing. It takes quite a bit of muscle to set something like this up, and so far nobody else has even come close. So well done for doing that. However, despite this, there is such a long way to go. Analysis is such an important task, and yet development has barely seemed to have begun in this area. I would urge the company not to stagnate, but to continue developing this area more and more. Here are some easy ways the experience could be improved for the user. Number 1. Give the user the option to add back solving into the analysis tree. That way we can distinguish more accurately and clearly which route moves are best and by how much. The user ought to have the option to see a back solve score for every single move analysed in every variation, so we can clarify which variations are good and bad. Number 2. Don't delete analysis, or at least give the user the option to keep it all, but intelligently push the bad analysis lower down, maybe colour it red or something like that, while the better lines could be in a different colour. Number 3. The search method could be improved by allowing the user to suggest a line which interests them without interrupting deep analysis. The software could then study this and assess it to see if it's any good. Number 4. The search method could do with some kind of option where crazy moves are looked at, or perhaps all legal moves are searched lightly before going heavy on the moves which appear best. At the moment, it's a little bit vulnerable to missing things, as we've seen in our example. But overall, I'm quite impressed with this, and we'll now move on to our second candidate. Welcome to Deep Shredder 13. The first thing to note is that this is the only software on the list to run on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So that really is quite something. Going into their website, you can see that all 3 operating systems are supported. However, a word of warning, the feature set isn't identical cross-platform. So, for example, the Mac version lacks a few features which the Windows version has. Going into their website, and I've gone into the Windows part because that's the one I'm interested in. Scrolling down, you can see the prices. In my opinion, this is a bit unfortunate. Obviously, the developer can charge what they like, but to charge an extra €50 for the multi-threaded version in 2021 is quite an assault on the senses. If it was 2007, okay, fair enough. You spend all of this time developing your engine so that it can run on more than one core, but in 2021, everything should be multi-threaded, really. This is the Deep Shredder interface. It's very clean, professional looking with lots of white space. My own preference perhaps would be for a little more colour, but that's just me. I think it looks very smart. I didn't find any bugs at all in the Shredder interface, and it does have a reputation as being a well-written user interface, which is reliable, so that is a good thing. The software has a well-presented help manual which outlines the analysis options. Of course, you've got your regular infinite analysis as usual. We're not really interested in that, but there are a few additional features. The simple one is a neat little trick. If you go into the analysis mode, you can then hold down the control key and enter a move on the board you want Shredder to analyze, and it will do that exclusively. So for example, let's say I want to look at Hydra's move queen to f4. I hold down the control key, and now it is searching queen f4 without playing it. Now you may be wondering, well, what's the point of that? Couldn't you just play the move? Well, in some ways it's like actually entering in the move, but you'll see the analysis from White's point of view because the move isn't actually played. I quite like this. I think it's a nice little touch. And you can see there in the bottom of the screen that Shredder is exclusively analysing queen f4 and will not consider any other move. Obviously, it depends upon you entering in a good move for it to analyse, but nevertheless, this is a neat feature. A more beefy option for analysis is the triple brain. This is unique to Shredder, I think, and attempts to exploit the fact that we have several good engines these days. The idea is you load up 2 engines into the interface. I've loaded up LC0 and the latest version of Stockfish, which we were using before in ChessBase. The manual has a very helpful comment here, which I've highlighted in blue. It tells us some information which we're expecting to see. The first line says that in the triple brain feature, you load up a couple of engines. It says in the second line, for triple brain to work best, you should combine 2 engines of about equal playing strength but different playing styles. So LC0 and Stockfish would work well. Stockfish is now a neural network evaluation function with an alpha-beta search. LC0 is a larger neural net evaluation function with a Monte Carlo search. So those two kind of complement each other. And then the first line tells us what we're about to expect. There is, as the term triple brain implies, there is a third engine in play, which I believe to be Deep Shredder. And this somehow assesses the input from the 2 other engines, and it gives a percentage score. And it says that 0% means the triple brain sees no alternative to the move, or doesn't know which move is better. 100%, it indicates that one move is clearly superior. So what we're looking for here is for the right moves to be identified, the best move, and we're looking for a high percentage from the triple brain, the Shredder engine, which gives us confidence that we've chosen the right move. Got it? So we're looking for both the right move and a high percentage. This is how it works. So let's go back into the Shredder interface. As you can see, I've loaded up Stockfish and LC0. You then go onto mode. You then go to analysis and then go to, that just gets LC0 going up, and then go to triple brain. So triple brain is up here. This is the Shredder engine. Because this puzzle is now relatively easy for modern engines, they've both identified knight h7 as the best move. Stockfish very quickly, of course, gets knight d3 as the counter. LC0 still stuck on king h7. A little bit curious that it takes a while to find it, but I'm sure that given time, LC0 will switch to knight d3 as the best move for black on move 15. Because they're both inputting knight h7, interestingly, the percentages are moving around a lot. 2%, my life, that is low. So what does that mean? Does that mean it doesn't have an alternative to choose from? Or does it mean it's just not very sure? Curious. Anyway, let's leave that for a little bit and we'll come back in a moment. Okay, I've given the system a couple of minutes, which should be plenty for this position. Both engines have now identified the main line as knight h7, knight d3, so no disagreement there. In the top box, the triple brain bit, but I think it is Shredder, yes, it's choosing knight h7. The percentage is now around 20, which I don't know what to make of that. I was expecting something higher. I'm not quite sure how to interpret that result. I'm also a little bit wary that we have a third engine which is hundreds of elo points weaker than either Stockfish or LC0 calling the shots. I mean, how would it know which one is better? Don't know. Let's try on our second position. Okay, this is position number 2, which as we know is considerably more difficult. So this one, to be fair, with other software, we will leave for 3 hours and come back. But I've got the same 2 engines set up, the original Stockfish we've been working with as before, LC0 and Triple Brain. So let's go into the appropriate place, go into analysis, and I'm already on Triple Brain. There we have it. So we're just going to let that cook for a while. Oh, already a surprise. The LC0 engine has immediately found knight h4. Now, I wasn't expecting that, but it does seem that the these big neural nets sometimes really score big on some positions. So that is a surprise. So now Triple Brain has got to make a tough decision. Does it choose Stockfish's h4? Or does it go for the far superior, I expect, knight h4? But let's come back in 3 hours and see how it does. Well, we're now coming up to the 3-hour mark, and to be honest, I've been popping in and out over the last 2 hours and 45 minutes, and Triple Brain has fluctuated all the way through between h4 and knight h4. It doesn't seem to know which one's better. Both of them get a low percentage. h4 currently at 10%, and very similarly, I think knight h4 was at somewhere around 11%. So it doesn't seem at all sure. I can't, to be honest, see how this is any better than running 2 engines and just letting them analyze with me watching them as the human analyst. I don't see what Triple Brain adds to this, because it doesn't seem to be able to decide between the 2 moves it's being given. And just to double check it wasn't just this position that was a problem. I tried it on several other positions as well before this one, and similarly it seemed quite indecisive. And my problem with this is that Triple Brain is not free. The Shredder engine is eating system resources that could be going to Stockfish, because they're both CPU driven. So I'm not sure what to make of this at all. It's an interesting concept, but I don't think it really works, and it could do with some improvement. So going into the website, as we did with Shredder, the first thing to note is that HiArcs is cross-platform. It supports both macOS and Windows. Given the way that Apple is developing their own hardware and the early results seem to be quite promising, that bodes well for the future, as indeed it does for Shredder. Okay, so let's go into the Windows version, which is the one we'll look at. And the first thing to note is that you get the standard double edition here. So you've got the deep version and the normal version. I'm not a great fan of this model, but then I looked a bit deeper and realized that actually the difference in price point between them is actually not just the engine that's causing that. You do indeed just get the single core version with HiArcs 14, but you actually get more stuff included with the user interface under the deep version. So it's not just about the engine, is my point, and therefore the price differential is a little bit better justified, in my opinion. Okay, one of the things to point out here is that the HiArcs model of doing things is quite different to other software releases. So if you click on this, you get a list of all of the changes they've made, and these changes are free. So normally with chess software, what happens is they release, let's say, version 6, and then whatever you get when you buy version 6 is what you get, and you won't get any, sometimes not even any patches even. Sometimes you have to wait till version 7 before you even get a bug fix. But if there are any new features, certainly you've got to wait till version 7. Whereas with the HiArcs model, they, as you can see, they keep on streaming out the free updates over a very long period of time. So that's something like 7 or 8 years. So that, I think, is a really good model. I think this should be the way forwards. I'm a big fan of this, and it keeps everything fresh. It feels like you're getting great value for money because the software is still being supported nearly a decade later. Of course, everybody is waiting for version 2. We're not pretending otherwise, but even so, it's a good model to follow, in my opinion. I've only recently acquired the new HiArcs interface, so here's a trip down memory lane. The mid-90s, the HiArcs DOS version had this really cool optimize button that you could press and it would just fix everything. And this is exactly what we need today, a big red optimize button. Anyway, let's move from the past to the present and see how things have developed. Moving on to the user interface. So general look and feel, it's a smart user interface, following the modern trend of plenty of white space. Personally, I'm more of a color guy, but that's just me. It is very smart. We're looking at version 1.9.5. HiArcs makes subscription books, which the developer then connects to the interface automatically, but you have to be a subscriber for those super duper books. They don't come free. It's important to understand that is not part of the price of the software. You'd have to additionally subscribe to get the super duper books, but they are very good. And the upgrade process happens automatically. It's not like the old days where if you bought a book from somebody, you would get an email link, you'd have to download the book, install the book, and set it all up by yourself. This happens all by itself behind the scenes. You just get a pop-up box about once a month saying that it's updated for you. I think that's a really neat touch. I like it very much. The design of this user interface is quite unusual. The user interface specializes in cycling through books, databases, and engines rapidly compared with other interfaces. Probably easiest if I just try and show you a position to demonstrate what I mean. So let's say I go to move 5 here. We're following the first position that we're interested in, and there are a variety of books that I've got. So the local opening book, that would be included in the software cost. That's got something to say on it. But then I've got my super duper tournament book, which I've paid for. It's a subscription book. And you see you've got more data there. It's almost certainly a stronger book as well. Lots of useful information. The books are strong. They're externally prepared. In my opinion, where HiArcs Chess Explorer is strong is bringing this external data from books and whatnot to bear on mainstream opening position theory very rapidly. That's where it really excels. So you can cycle through books, cycle through engines fast. When you move to the extremities of opening theory, the software diminishes in strength quite fast. And when you analyze a middle game, to be honest, there's not much here apart from the standard infinite analysis, which is a bit disappointing. So I'll just show you in this case. All right, obviously we're in quite an early phase of the opening, but if I just go a bit further, 96, suddenly we're out of book. Where does it? Oh gosh, it's slightly earlier than I thought. Okay, so black has played some suboptimal moves, to be fair, but even so, you'd hope that the books would have something to say, but they don't. And certainly by the time we get to our critical position, where we're going to be looking at knight h7, there's nothing here at all. Which means that, as an analyst, as a human analyst, I've only got one place to go now, haven't I? Which is the engine. So again, following the same design process, I can cycle rapidly through the engines. It's not like other software. We have to close it down, find the one you want, load it up. It's much quicker than that, which is great. Deep HiArcs is quite old now, running this on 16 threads. What has it found? It's found Hydra's Queen f4. Will it find knight h7? It might do. It has done. I'll bet you it won't find knight d3. Oh, it has found knight d3. Wow, I'm quite impressed by that. For an 8-year-old engine, that is pretty good. And then there's Komodo by Dragon, or whatever it's called. Dragon by crazy name. They should have just called it Komodo Dragon. But this is a stronger engine, much more recent, and I'm expecting this. Yeah, there you go. Almost immediately. But basically, what we're talking about here is just infinite analysis. That's really all it is. And the trouble is when we move on to a harder position, like position number 2, which we'll come to in just a moment, all you can do is just let it run, and that's it. Well, for completeness, I tried the software on position 2. I've given it 2 hours and 40 minutes, and it still wants to play c takes b, rook b4, b3. I don't think that's going to do it. Anyway, that's Hayek's Chess Explorer. Interesting piece of software. Looking forward to version 2. Now let's move on to our next contender. Nibbler. From the moment you download Nibbler from the GitHub, rather than a polished website, to the moment you actually run it, you know you're not dealing with a regular user interface. As it loads up, it gives you lots of technical information about the graphics cards. There is a lot to say about this interface. It's a simple program by the standards of others. It doesn't have hardly any of the features that the other ones do, and it can only run one engine, which is LC0. So you may be thinking to yourself, why is something which looks a bit like 30-year-old MChess even on the list at all? You may be even more surprised to learn that this is one of the strongest interfaces on the whole list. Right, let's start at the beginning. The program is free, doesn't cost a penny. It runs LC0, so a decent NVIDIA graphics card would be really helpful here for decent performance. Nibbler looks simple, but in a moment is going to come to life and do something that none of the other interfaces can. In a nutshell, it does 3 things the others don't do. Number 1, it displays its evaluation graphically rather than as a line of text. Number 2, it displays its evaluation by a winning probability rather than as a stupid fraction of a pawn, which we've all been used to now for goodness knows how many decades. And number 3, it displays many candidate moves simultaneously with no slowdown, since LC0 is not an alpha-beta engine. Well, they say that a picture paints 1,000 words, so let's see this thing in action. Okay, I've entered in the first position that we're interested in, and in a moment we can see Nibbler coming to life. Now, I won't go to the critical position straight away. Let me just show you. Let's say, let's go here. No, let's go here. Right, clearly after move 5, White has got a variety of options. He doesn't have to play e5, presumably knight c3, d3, d4, bishop c6, possibly even a move like h3. All of these moves might be viable, but how good are they? Watch this. So what you do is you go to Analysis, go, and suddenly the board lights up. It's just incredible. You do not have to take your eyes off the board, and this is one of the great things. Those lines represent the moves that it considers to be good. The numbers at the node represent the winning probability. So at the moment it thinks that bishop c6 is the best move with a 57% chance of winning. And all of the moves I suggested are, oh no, it's also found c3 with a 55% chance of winning. So White has got 6 plausible moves at his disposal, according to Nibbler running LC0. Now, if you think about it, this is so much better than what we've been used to for decades, because what we've been used to is something like 0.4 pawns up. I mean, what does that even mean? Material is just one part of position evaluation. And what, of course, the engine is doing is it's condensing king safety, space, material, pawn structure, color complexes, the bishop pair, and so on. It's condensing all of that information into one value, which is a fraction of a pawn. Sorry about the noise, the fans have just spooled up. It's condensing all of that value into a fraction of the pawn, and then we, as humans, intuitively make something of that. So we all have this intuitive idea of what 0.4 pawns up actually means. But if you think about it, it's basically meaningless. Because 0.4 pawns up for Stockfish is different to 0.4 pawns up from Houdini or Hayek's or Fritz. See the problem? What does that actually mean? Because chess is ultimately only 3 results anyway. It's a win for white, a draw, a win for black. Whereas what Nibbler shows is what are my chances of winning if I play that move, and 55%, or bishop c6, 57%, that is something that I can relate to, because I've got some understanding of statistics. So 57%, yeah, that's a winning percentage. I get it. Those are my odds. This is really useful. We'll flip to our critical position. And here, okay, it's taking a few seconds to think. It likes Hydra's queen to f4, and that's its only move at the moment. But now it's quickly found knight h7 with 80%. And again, that's extremely useful. So Hydra wasn't stupid to come up with queen f4. It's not as good a move as knight h7, but it's not a stupid move. And if you look on the right hand side, you've then got the text equivalent where it gives you all the values of all the moves at your disposal. And to be honest, there's only really two strong candidate moves. Oh no, it's showing queen to h3 now with 56% chances. So I really, really like Nibbler. It does one thing, but it does one thing really well. And it's a shame in some ways it has taken us so long to discover something like this. So simple, but often the simplest ideas are the most brilliant. That, in a nutshell, is Nibbler. And the second position, let's see how Nibbler with LC0 does on this one. Okay, so you can see that pretty much immediately it gets knight to h4, but I do think this probably says a lot more about the engine LC0 than it does about the Nibbler interface. There is no automated analysis here, so what you're seeing, unfortunately, is a situation where LC0 happens to shine, but I could easily find a position that Stockfish excels in and LC0 doesn't, in which case this interface would not look quite so strong, because, as I said, there is no automated analysis here. It's just doing its thing, and it happens to perform very well on this position. Nevertheless, it is very impressive that it finds knight to h4 with a winning percentage of 74%. Interestingly, the move h4, which was favoured by Stockfish under the ChessBase interface, gets 56%, so quite a big difference in performance. So there we go. That is Nibbler in a nutshell. I think it's quite an impressive but simple program. Aquarium costs €36. So this is Aquarium 2021. It's just been released. The design of Aquarium is based on tabs which go down the bottom left-hand side. If you ever want to try your hand at video editing, the best software out there right now is Blackmagic's DaVinci Resolve. And they have a more flashy but very similar concept where you have different tabs as a way of getting several programs into one user interface. And effectively what it does is it allows you to combine a lot of things without cluttering the screen. So working from top to bottom, you have a play tab at the top. That's for when you actually want to play against the program. We're not interested in that. Sandbox is where you do your infinite analysis. We will actually be briefly touching on this one because it will be relevant to the automated analysis, which Aquarium is famed for. Engines is where you set up your engines. I've done that already. Engine competitions, we're not interested in that tab at all. And then IDEA, this is the tab that we'll be spending most of our time on. It's an acronym. It stands for Interactive Deep Engine Analysis, and it's all written in capitals except for the E, which is lowercase. In terms of look and feel, the software is intelligently laid out and bursting with the most powerful analysis tools on the planet, in my opinion. There are quite a lot of problems with the software, and I'll come to those later on, but it is worth just appreciating how much this software can do. It really is quite incredible from that point of view. However, it is a daunting piece of software to use. 5 years ago, I made some videos on YouTube, which you can watch to get an overview of Aquarium, but that's really for compensation for the fact that the software is not very intuitive. There is a help file, of course, it's well written, but sometimes your best bet is just to ask people on the Ribka forum, because to be honest, a lot of things in this software are not obvious, and you kind of just have to learn and get by. There is quite a steep learning curve, and it will take hours, but nevertheless, what you can do with this is remarkable. Okay, what I'd like to do now is to set up a project. That's how Aquarium works in IDEA. You set up a new project for the position or positions. A project can include positions, plural, that we're interested in. So what you do is you would go here, click on new project. I'm going to call it position 1. There we go. And then you choose your root position. Let's get rid of this. So the start position, there we go. It's white's move, castling is enabled. That's okay. That's okay. I've set up my analysis quality. Again, I won't explain. There are so many bells and whistles you need to tweak. I won't explain them all, but I've set it up the way I want it to. That's the important thing. And then the idea tab is the most relevant one. I need to change some of these values. Again, I won't go into the technical details of what I'm doing, but basically I'm setting up automated analysis because it's going to run for a long time all by itself, and you just need to know what to do at the beginning, and then you let it go. That should be fine for that position. Okay, so I click OK. I've got queries going to the table bases. Yep. All right. No. Right. So position number 1. I click on that, and then I get to basically a start position. I'm going to paste in the moves, which gets us to here. And then what you do is you add those positions with this red button here to the analysis queue. You see I've just added 28 new positions. And then I'm going to make this position, which is the one we're particularly interested in, as a new root. And then I'll delete the start position root later on. Now, the thing is, what's happening here, and this is really, really important to understand, is that Aquarium solves the problem of analysis by creating a project, which we've just done. It will then analyze the project in incredible depth and width. But the way it does it is by running multiple instances of an engine, with each engine instance running and analyzing its own position. So as you've just seen, I've added 28 individual positions to the queue because it analyzes all the moves, not just the one you're interested in. I'm quite interested to see the mistakes that black may have made to get up to this point. And also it will continue to add more positions once we go past this position. So it's going to build up an entire tree. And that's really the great beauty of Aquarium. It doesn't just do analysis, it gives you a tree that you can take away, you can add to later on, you can put it on a laptop and view it on a different machine, you can tinker with it, you can explore, you can change things. It's just remarkable. It builds up a tree for you. And then what you do is you set the thing going. Okay. And what we've got here are now 29 instances of stockfish, same stockfish as before. And you've just got to give it time. This will now run for hours. I've left my projects before running for months. And I'll explore in a moment some of the other really cool things you can do with Aquarium. But first of all, let's just take a break there. I'll come back in a few hours' time and see where it's got to. Okay, I've given it about 3 hours in total. It's actually a couple of days later, but I stopped the analysis over the evening so that the comparison was fair. I want to talk about a couple of different things here. One is I want to talk about back solving. Back solving is where the root position is assessed in light of discoveries that are made in future positions. So here, knight h7 is very clearly being identified by idea as the strongest move, 2.45. Hydra's move, which is queen to f4, is much weaker. I'm interested to know why it's that much weaker. Now this is interesting because e5 was always thought to be the refutation to queen f4, but it's found an even stronger move, it seems, which is rook to b5. I thought that just lost to a4. Hang on. a4, knight e6. Yeah. Okay, it's going to sack the exchange. That's interesting. So what happens here? Knight g5. Oh no, queen f6. Well, I'll have to look into this. I've learned something new here. It's discovered some kind of new defense. But all right, the point is back solving. So it discovers here that maybe f6 is a particularly strong move, for example. And therefore, queen f4 is judged in light of the discovery of f6. So that's the reason why queen f4 has got a relatively low evaluation. Back solving is very powerful. It can be misused dreadfully. So there is a bit of kind of like a health warning that goes with back solving, but nevertheless, it's very helpful to get a table generated with correct evaluations where the root is given kind of like the benefit of hindsight, where future leaves are used as informing the root. So I can't understand why more people don't use back solving, but there we go. That's one of the great functions of the idea table. The other thing I wanted to clarify from earlier is that you saw how many tasks are running, and if you add these up, we've done over 1,000. The beauty of idea is that it's running multiple instances of Stockfish, and each Stockfish instance is running on one thread. Now, the advantage of this is that alpha beta engines lose search efficiency as the thread count increases. So let me put it simply, Stockfish running on 30 threads is not searching 30 times faster than Stockfish running on one thread. It might have 30 times more nodes per second, but the search efficiency problem will kick in, and probably it's only running, I don't know, 10 times faster or maybe 15 times faster, something like that. Now, because IDEA runs each engine on one thread, therefore it's running at peak efficiency no matter how many threads are running. The other thing you can do with IDEA, which you ought to know about, is you can network computers together reasonably easily. You need to know about scripting. It's not as easy as ChessBase is grabbing computers off the cloud. But nevertheless, you can network computers together and, in theory, just have hundreds of cores running hundreds of versions of Stockfish, all on one thread, all analyzing one individual unique position, and therefore search efficiency is at an optimal rate always. And this gives IDEA a huge advantage over its competitors. It means you can process vast amounts of positions relatively quickly. In this particular position, I'm running each instance of Stockfish on 3 minutes per position, and it's generated a tree of whatever it is, I don't know, 1,500 positions, something like that, maybe 2,000 positions. And it's concluded that knight h7 is the best move. We're going to move on now because this position now is relatively easy for engines, and I didn't analyze this position the way I would normally, which is I did literally nothing. This is the lazy man's version. I just let the thing run. But in our second position, I'm assuming that one's going to be a bit more difficult, and I'm going to introduce you to Sandbox. So moving on to position number 2, I've already set up the IDEA project to save time. All the settings are in place and we can begin immediately. I've very crucially got 20 instances of Stockfish running, and you'll see the reason for that in a moment rather than 30. I've got 32 threads on my machine, but I've got a reason for only allowing 20 of them to run, and you'll see that in a minute. So let's just get that cooking. All right, normally on the root position, it only analyzes one task. Don't be alarmed by that, nothing unusual. Now what I want to do is to move up these tabs on the left-hand side to Sandbox. And in Sandbox, I'm then going to start doing some infinite analysis. Now you might be thinking, why? Well, I'll show you in a moment. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to link Sandbox to my idea project, which is now done. I can see idea running in the background, even though I'm actually on a different tab. There's idea. There's Sandbox. And now in Sandbox, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing infinite analysis with, whoops, this one, LC0. Now what I want you to do is to try and work out why I have chosen LC0. I've got two main reasons. One is, I'll just get that going. One is LC0 is roughly about the same strength as Stockfish, but clearly has quite a complementary playing style. They're not identical. They're quite different. They've got different search techniques. That's one reason. There is another reason though. The other reason why I'm choosing LC0 is because LC0 uses a few threads on the CPU, two of them actually, and most of the work is being done on the graphics card, whereas Stockfish runs exclusively on the CPU. So what this means is that as LC0 is analyzing right here in Sandbox, which I will be playing around with at the moment because I can tinker with it left, right, and center, it's then sending positions, which you can see here, down to idea, which Stockfish is analyzing. And because LC0 runs mainly on the graphics card, Stockfish exclusively on the CPU, I get much more bang out of my system with both of them going simultaneously. Effectively, LC0 is generating positions, and then Stockfish is cross-checking them, analyzing them, and then Aquarium is back-solving them, all while it's building this wonderful tree. So for example, one of the questions I've got in this position is what happens if black declines a sacrifice? So I just move my knight. All right, let's not take the knight. What happens if I go queen b5? Just like show me the win here. Is it bishop h5 or something? No, LC0 thinks the winning move is knight to g2. What the heck is the point of knight g2? Is it really that bad? Queen f3 it now says. Okay, so it's going to take with the queen on h5 rather than the bishop. That does look a bit more potent. Yeah, I can see how that would transpose back to the main line. So what it's doing is that as it's analyzing, it's shoving these positions for Stockfish to double check, but we're going to just manually go through some of it. So let's say I grab here, queen h5, let's maybe go to f5. Now what happens? Rook e3, can't the knight just take, I don't know, take. Aha, bishop c2, g6, mate. And then I can add those positions in manually as well, just to make sure nothing's lost. See how that jumped up, now up to over 20 positions. And because Stockfish is processing them in real time. So you can see how powerful this is. I'm playing around as a human in Sandbox, aided by LC0, who's effectively my guide. It's almost like you would do infinite analysis in any normal chess software program. But in addition to that, it's being linked to the idea project, which is also running in the background and processing everything and making it into a table. So if I then go back to the idea tab, you can see that it's already started processing quite a few positions. We've got 18 or so in the queue, and it's analyzed 4 of them so far here, and that will grow as time they can see it growing now. As time goes on, it will continue to develop. Now, the beauty of this is I can explore whatever I want. IDEA stands for Interactive Deep Engine Analysis, so I can just play around to my heart's content. Let's try something else. What after knight h4, what happens if, let's take it, then we said queen h3 was the move, then knight f5, then we're taking here. All right, then, does black have something more clever than b takes c3? Let's try b takes c3. Where's the win here, actually? So it likes b3. I thought bishop c2 was quite potent with the idea of playing rook e3 and rook h3 because the rook can't be taken because of the mate on h7. Can we do that? What happens if I do this? Aha, bishop e5. See, a human just wouldn't find these defenses. Shows just what a phenomenally difficult position this is. But d4, stopping the rook's path. I can't go to e4. No, black is better now. This is the power of the system. In real time, you can explore these very complicated ideas and variations and concepts and just try stuff. And you can just propose idiotic things in Sandbox. You're not doing any harm whatsoever because it will all be cross-checked and put in order back into IDEA. So what I suggest we do now is I will continue to play around for another 10 minutes roughly. I'll stop the video now, but I'll give it 10 more minutes of playing around. Then I'll give IDEA, I don't know, an hour to process the results, and let's see what it comes up with. So in grand total, it'll have about 60 minutes of processing time. Returning to Sandbox, one thing I'd like to point out is that you can actually add different engines to guide you in your analysis as you're playing around. It's entirely possible to have LC0 joined with an old version of Ribka joined with Hierarch Shredder and as many other engines as you want. Obviously, they've all got to share system resources. That was one of the reasons why I set my system to 20 threads, because I anticipated maybe adding a few more engines. But what the other engines will do is they will contribute different suggestions, and therefore your IDEA project will be richer because it will then be processing all of the suggestions of all of the engines rather than just from one engine and one human. This is where networking computers really has its big advantage, because you can run these other engines on external systems and therefore you're not slowed down in any way at all. It's really well thought through, in my opinion. Okay, let's move on to the IDEA project, which is now complete for us. So we see some interesting things. Knight h4 is clearly the best move, h4 second, and a few surprises here. So after knight h4, it does seem to be a clear-cut mistake to take that knight. B takes c and king h7, not a move I was expecting to see, by the way. King h7 are both better defenses. Now here, as an analyst, I would pause and I would say, King h7, not thought of that one. That's an interesting move. We'll put it on the board. And what I would then do is go to this button here, which says Custom Task. And this is a place where you can add in a particular task to the IDEA project. It's not a separate project, it's part of the project, but it is a specific task on a specific position, and you get it to do a certain type of analysis within the IDEA project on that position. So for example, let's say I go to this one, complete 4 ply. That will look at 4 alternatives, with each alternative going 4 plies deep. It's a very useful little package to get, let's say, a concentrated burst of analysis on the move king h7. It's a little bit like ChessBase's deep position analysis, except you're controlling the parameters. That's really the thing. The final thing I want to say about Aquarium, before pointing out some of the drawbacks of the software, is that if we were analysing an opening, which we're not, but if we were, we could dump a whole database of games into the IDEA project. And if you're analysing an opening system fairly early on, this will generate tens of thousands of positions very easily. It gives you a very comprehensive analysis result, but it does also increase the need for faster or more computers. Anyway, let's move on now, and we'll look at some of the drawbacks of the software. Here are 5 areas I think Aquarium could be improved in. Number 1, the user interface could be made to be more friendly. Help videos could be included as standard. For example, let's suppose I do want to do a custom task here. I click on custom task, and did you know that you had to choose use prolongation strategy? Well, tough luck if you didn't. You click on this and then let's choose one. So extreme 11 plies. And what it tells me is make deep and wide tree. Max ply 11, 1-3, 6 alt, 4-10, 3 alt. Can you imagine the average person down a chess club who's running Windows Vista and Fritz 11 coming to Aquarium and understanding that. They've got no chance. It's too difficult. There needs to be some kind of better explanation or some simplification or some, I don't know, better help file, something. But clearly this is just too much. Also, just going into the idea project itself, when you're trying to set the thing up, I mean, clicking on this scale from 0 to 100, the tree shape, these options here, false alarm check. Do you really want a false alarm check on your project? And all the other bits and bobs. And we haven't even clicked on the advanced tab yet. See what I mean? It's really quite a challenging piece of software, and it does take a lot of time to get acquainted with it. Number 2. There could be general improvements all round and advancements. For example, some of the custom tasks I think could be made better. The graphics in just a few areas could be modernized a bit, made to look a little bit nicer. They're small tweaks, but these kind of creature comforts do go quite a long way. Number 3, in the idea project, they use Minimax as the tree is developing, but I don't think it goes any further than that. Why not introduce alpha-beta pruning? Surely that would be a way of searching fewer positions as you're building up the tree. So that could be quite a big speed up. I mean, it needs to be considered anyway. Number 4, Aquarium is brilliant at being able to recruit extra computing power through a network. However, it does need to be on a LAN. Compare that with, say, ChessBase 16, which can do everything over the internet. And in this regard, ChessBase 16 is far superior. Not only can you get computers anywhere in ChessBase 16, but you can do it with a few mouse clicks. With Aquarium, they all need to be set up in your room or close together on a LAN, and you'll need to be acquainted with scripting. It's not that easy at all. And I think this would make quite a considerable upgrade to the system. And number 5, the bugs. The tricky thing about Aquarium is that it definitely does have bugs. There are quite a lot of them. And what makes it particularly difficult is that some people never experience any bugs and other people experience them all the time. I've been in both camps from about 2010 through to 2019. I barely had a single crash with Aquarium. It was remarkably solid, and like others, I could not understand what all the fuss was about. Then I installed Aquarium 2020 and it crashed almost every day. And some people online were saying the same thing. They were saying you need to back up your projects daily, otherwise you just lose everything, which is clearly unacceptable. What you're seeing on screen at the moment is a video of Aquarium 2021 crashing. And it was so unstable, I had to use Task Manager to shut it down. It would be great if someone would go through it carefully and iron these bugs out, modernize it a bit, bring it up to date, and show us that this is not a piece of abandonware. Because although the splash screen says 2021, when you load up, you click on the About file, and even here it says 2016, and it just makes you think, have they done anything over the last 5 years? Or is it really just, you know, changing the splash screen every year and selling it again? Because it does look remarkably similar with each new release. Okay, that's all I've got to say about Aquarium. There are some issues with it, but overall, this is a very strong piece of software. The final program I'd like to introduce you to is Chess Position Trainer. This one is a bit different. It's not designed as an analysis program at all. It can't even analyze our second position because it's really designed, its main purpose is to help over the board players memorize their opening repertoire by testing their memory. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, why put it on the list then? Well, I'll come to that in a moment. First of all, just appreciate the look and feel of this lovely program. It is beautifully presented and laid out. The developer has moved away from the white space model that Google and Microsoft Office are so fond of, and instead has gone for grays with splashes of colour. I find this much easier on the eye, and if you're an analyst, you will spend a lot of time looking at your screens. I personally appreciate this. The reason I've put this on the list is that although you need an opening position to do any work, you can, if I go to this tab, analyse your entire opening with an engine of your choice, and then look what he's included. Minimax calculation has been bundled in. So I was quite impressed by this, and it is a nice way of analysing opening systems. I'm not going to bother to do anything else with this program. I just wanted to show it to you as a possibility that might appeal to over-the-board chess players who want to do some analysis on systems rather than individual middle game or end game positions. Now we'll move to our conclusion of this video. Let's look at the final standings of the chess software, remembering that there were many programs that didn't even make it onto the list. In 6th place, it shouldn't really be on the list at all, but it's so pretty, and it does have back solving, Chess Position Trainer. In 5th place, the Solid Shredder, but we'd love to see some new ideas developed here. In 4th place, Hayek's Chess Explorer. Good in the opening, less good elsewhere, but let's see what version 2 has in store. Quite a big jump up to joint 2nd place, 2 interfaces which could not be more different from each other. The Goliath of chess software, ChessBase 16, but from an analysis point of view, it doesn't quite land the knockout blow you're expecting. And Nibbler, really it's just a one-trick pony, but boy does it do that one trick well. And in 1st place, but I do wonder for how much longer, Aquarium 2021. Thanks so much for watching, and a message to all developers: keep up the good work and keep developing.